As we gather here today, we pray that we are ever mindful of opportunities to render our service to fellow citizens and to our community. May we keep in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us continue to strive to make a better world. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for being here this morning. If I could have a motion, please, to approve the final agenda.
I just wonder if we might move Admin A forward, because I think there's a lot of people here for that item.
I'm happy to do that. Anybody else have any changes to the agenda? If not, may I have a motion to approve it as stated?
So move.
Second.
Oh, I have to hit the vote button, don't I? Gosh darn it, I forget about that. We have this new system here, and we're all getting used to it.
Okay. Does Joanne need to hit?
Yes. All those in favor, please cast your vote. And the motion carries unanimously. So we'll move the Connecticut Street Multimodal Improvement Project. Joanne, where did you want to move it to after the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. And let's see, Michelle?
Mayor, I apologize. We're not quite able to get the public comment kiosk to work, so we're back to the old-fashioned way.
That's fine. That's fine.
My first request to address the council is from Ellen Vaughn and Seal Spuler.
A double whammy. Morning, Ellen. Good morning, Seal.
Morning.
Good morning.
And Seal speaks first.
Seal Spuler from Estero Boulevard.
Ellen Vaughn from Estero Boulevard.
We're speaking this morning on behalf of the Mound House because our director, Allison Geeson, couldn't be here this morning. Ellen and I have two announcements concerning the Mound House that is very exciting. So I'll speak first, and I'm reading it so that I say it exactly correctly, and then Ellen will tell her exciting news. The Mound House has just received the historic and archaeological designation to be on the National Historic Plate of Historic Places. I'm telling you, we're so excited I could hardly wait to tell you because we've kept this a secret.
I can't believe you waited this long.
But this is truly an outstanding accomplishment that was brought about by our director, Allison Geeson. But this was able to happen because our town's first council in 1996 had the vision of what the Mound House could become, and they took the leap of faith to proceed in obtaining a grant through submitting a management plan. All of the upcoming councils all through the years have supported this accomplishment, and we wish to thank them all, which is quite something. Now, as of now, we have had the grand opening that was held in November 14, 2015. Can you imagine that was 4 years ago? I can't believe it. So we now hope to have you save the date, November 14th, 2019, when we hope to celebrate all of this wonderful news. Now, if that wasn't good enough, for good news, Ellen will now speak.
Thank you, Seal. You're a tough act to follow. So I am just here on behalf of the Friends of the Mound House. And as everyone knows, the Friends was founded in order to help preserve the property. And now that the town has successfully launched it into a wonderful museum that's both a historic museum and an archaeological museum, the Friends has stepped into the side role of being a fundraising part of the arm of the Mound House. So the Friends of the Mound House have launched into doing fundraisers. And I'm here to report that our second annual Artful Intersection fundraiser, which was held March 22nd at the Women's Club, was successful in that we raised north of $23,000 for the Mound House. And in addition, we launched an endowment campaign. And the endowment campaign, which launched that evening, is now north of $7,500. And we have the ambitious goal of raising $30,000 for this calendar year. And I have to thank all of my island friends and our non-island friends who were the contributors to that. Thank you.
Thank you, ladies. That's wonderful news. Thank you very much for all your hard work.
Next request is from Pamela Abraham.
Hi, I'm Pam Abraham.
Good morning,
I live at
Pam.
450 Connecticut. My father and mother, Paul and Ruth Abraham, lived there for 35 years before they passed. And I'm here to say that exactly 19 years ago, the residents of Connecticut and nearby streets totally objected to the town getting a grant to buy Mrs. Long's property, to turn it into the Mound House. They feared the town would turn it into a park for outdoor concerts, kayak rentals, and other assorted noisy events, which would totally destroy the privacy and safety of residential zoned streets. But the local politicians at the time rammed the project through by totally ignoring the local residents' wishes. False statements were submitted to the Florida Communities Trust to influence them to give Fort Myers Beach the grant to buy Mrs. Long's house. And nearby residents have been suffering ever since. All our fears have become fact. 5 years ago, Anita presided over a meeting of dozens of residents of Connecticut and adjacent streets held at the Newton House for the purpose of discussing the town's purchase of the vacant lot on Connecticut to turn it into a parking lot for the Mound House and build a sidewalk from there to the Mound House. Anita said she wanted to gauge the residents' opinions of the project, and she would abide by our opinions. The overwhelming vote at the meeting was for no parking lot, no sidewalk, and to sell the lot. But it was a phony setup. Our wishes were totally ignored and didn't stop Anita or Alan Mandel or Rexanne from getting the funds for the sidewalk and the parking lot. That brings us to a meeting last year where the residents saw the drawings for the sidewalk, which showed how much invasion and destruction of their property would happen. Again, the residents totally objected to seeing their trees and hedges torn down and their front yards invaded to put in what we were told had to be a 6-foot wide sidewalk. We suggested a compromise to stop the sidewalk at the corner of Shell Mound, since most of the foot traffic wasn't going up to the Mound House, but was from vacationers and rental houses near Shell Mound walking over to the beach. The then mayor and others listened to us and agreed our wishes should be met. Then at the April Town Council meeting, there was a vote in favor of our compromise. I note that Anita voted against it because, as she said, quote, "There must be a complete path to the Mound House. To base a decision on a few residents' complaints is bad governing." Apparently, it's residents be damned. So here we are again with at least 2 town council members pushing through the rest of their plan to destroy our privacy, our landscapes, and our safety. How would you like the 10-foot high ficus hedge across your front yard, the hedge you had to put up to maintain your privacy and safety, to be torn down? How would you like vagrants walking on your property and peering in your front windows? How would you like having to constantly call the police at night after dark about the occupied parked cars outside the Mound House and the noises coming from the Mound House in the middle of the night? How would you like living across from I'm not going to stop, from a designated Pokemon place that has cars running up and down
Mrs.
in the middle of
Abraham,
the
you
night?
didn't have to be rude. I was going to let you continue.
I'm
Would you
sorry,
turn
I'm
that
not
off?
being rude. I'm stating facts. The vast majority of residents on Fort Myers Beach don't give a hoot about the Mound House and don't believe their tax dollars should support it. And I have a survey that will verify that. When they buy property on a residential zoned street, they want it to stay residential. And they want the town council's actions to reflect the residents' wishes. Fort Myers Beach residents want their tax money spent on things that actually matter, like clean water, improved traffic flow, and less crime. Locals and tourists alike come to Fort Myers Beach for the weather, the beach, the restaurants. They don't come for a history lesson or to hear about the Calusa. The parking lot at the Mound House is almost never full, not to mention the parking lot down the street is almost always empty. Spending money on a sidewalk for foot traffic demand that does not exist now and never will is totally unnecessary in light of all the disruption and expense it will cost the residents. Stick with the compromise and end the sidewalk at Shell Mound, please.
Thank you.
The next request is from Art Monahan.
Good morning, Art.
Good morning, council members. Art Monahan. I'm a 15-year resident of Connecticut Street. I'm here to speak in opposition to a sidewalk from Shell Mound down to the Mound House. With 15, 16 years on that street raising kids, I do feel like a newcomer to the street still because of so many of my neighbors have raised families here with kids. But our position remains, there is no need for a sidewalk. It is not a good use of public funds. If there is a safety issue, if that's the primary driving concern, we would rather see some kind of pavement markings at a fraction of the cost. Pavement markings are more of a traffic calming device. Pavement markings, you can just simply put another stripe down the road, say share the road. The county's done it on a county road, which has a lot more traffic on a sterile boulevard. It meets a need. Traffic calming devices are important things, and we feel a sidewalk actually may be the opposite of that. If you put pedestrians on a sidewalk, then that will encourage people to drive faster on the street. They won't feel impeded they'll lose perspective that they're in a residential area. And we feel it's actually the opposite way to go. Clean water is a huge issue in this town. The more we pave the street, the more we pave our right-of-ways, the more we lose stormwater retention areas, the more we turn pervious surface to impervious surface, we're becoming our own worst enemy with water quality. We're just increasing watershed immediately into the curbs, into the streets, and into the back bay. For cost consideration, for aesthetic of the street, for traffic calming measures, none of these are a good fit for putting a sidewalk from Shell Mound down to the Mound House. If your biggest concern is through traffic from Estero Boulevard through the neighborhood, then that needs to be addressed separately. That you need to address through traffic. You need to address traffic calming devices, signage, increased fines, speed bumps, speed humps, speed lumps, whatever. But that needs to be addressed as a separate issue. There is no pedestrian safety issue on Connecticut Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Art.
The next request is from Norbert DeMars,
Mr. DeMars.
who will be followed by Ollie Curran.
Good morning, Norbert.
Good morning. I'm Norbert DeMars. I live on Connecticut Street. And many of my neighbors will expound on the rationale for not wanting the sidewalk. I came today, though, just to point out one simple thing. And I would like to go back to last week's meeting when Patrick Rinaldi tried to gain permission to use his license for parasail. And it appeared to me that there was an overwhelming consensus on the committee that they should respect the decisions of previous committees. There was quite a bit of discussion, and all five of you at the end said, let's put Connecticut Street back on the agenda. So I'm here today to ask you to use that same rationale when you discuss this issue. The neighbors have been through many years of discussion on the sidewalks, and approximately a year ago this time, everyone agreed, including the council, that the compromise that was worked out at that meeting, a sidewalk from Estero Boulevard to Shell Mound and nothing else, is what we would do. And now, a year later, with the new council, we're back to the same issue. So again, I only ask that you use the same rationale with our street that you used when you considered Patrick Rinaldi's request. Thank you.
Thank you, Norbert. Michelle, the next speaker.
Next is Ollie Curran, who will be followed by Bill Veach.
Good morning, Ollie.
Hi, my name's Ollie Curran, and I live in 155 Connecticut Street for 43 years. And for the ones that do not know me, I was one of the ones that went around the street with Dolores Yost and really try to get the Mound House to be a beautiful place. And I think the ladies did the work that they have done there. And they have done a great job. But it really has intruded a lot in our own street. So the Mound House was supposed to be a culture center, learning culture center. And I know that Mrs. Abraham and Miss Abraham, we kind of discussed all of that. They didn't want it because right across from their place, but we understood that. So again, last year, we were here and we decide, and I was so animated that I said from the Estero Boulevard to the stop sign, and you stop. You stop. And so I'm here to ask you again that we stop at that point, because that's really when they go to the stop and they turn to the Shell Mound, that's where the big, huge traffic goes and goes crazy. Even some of the locals go cuckoo around that area. So anyway, so I am asking you that we are voting for you to keep our street as a residence area as we really want. That's what we really like. And I raised my kids there. My son learned how to bike around the Shell Mound with Mrs. Long. Love the street. We have beautiful people there. And I really don't see any dangers from the stop sign down. Okay, then we have the parking lot. Actually, it's kind of nice to walk around there and don't have neighbors to worry about and fight that it's their territorial thing. So I can walk in that parking lot anytime I want with a dog or a cat, whatever. So that's what it is. So please don't invade our street with more sidewalks, more people running. Yes, maybe whatever bumper street. Well, we can hear about the bumpers, but now everything is more sophisticated. Do something that we don't have to just zoom by and really invade our street with a lot of traffic. I thank you, and I trust you, and I support you. We will support you. But if you guys start making this beach a whole area that we don't like, we'll be here again, okay? So thank you.
Got it, Ollie. Thank you. Bill Veach.
Bill Veach will be followed by Daniel Curran.
Hi, Bill Veach for the record. I consider myself a really fortunate man. When we came down and moved onto Fort Myers Beach, we thought that all of our neighbors would be transient vacationers and there wouldn't really be a sense of a neighborhood. And it couldn't be further from the truth. There are people who live, and Connecticut Street is my neighborhood. And there are people there who they've raised, like Ollie said, they've raised their kids together. We've buried neighbors. We've been through a lot together. We have parties where we go from house to house, walking down those same streets. I think that we're a long, skinny town without a lot of residents. And that town is really broken up to a small series of little neighborhoods, which all of you live in and appreciate. This is ours. And I think that most of the neighbors, at least that I know, a lot of them are very resistant to the Mound House, and they become more comfortable with it. I think that putting sidewalks, especially down the narrow part of the street, from Shell Mound down to the Mound House, is really seen as a commercial intrusion into a residential neighborhood, and not just a residential neighborhood with very deep roots. Now, I realize that you do have a right-of-way there, but just because you have the right to do something doesn't make it the right thing to do. So, thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Dan?
Daniel Curran will be followed by Roz Grady.
Okay. Good morning, Dan.
Good morning. I'm Daniel Curran, 155 Connecticut Street. I've lived there 43 years with Ollie Curran, so I'm well trained. I have to support all of my neighbors' statements. I agree with them. The sidewalk is not a necessary issue. There are no sidewalks in the Case Division on any of the streets. If there's someone that lives on one of those streets, perhaps you'd like the sidewalk there. But it's not needed where it is. The only need on Connecticut Street is to cut through traffic, particularly during season, which, as Mr. DeMars said, is a separate issue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dan.
Roz Grady will be followed by William Grady.
Nice to put a face with the email. It's nice to meet you, Roz.
I'm Roz Grady, and I live at 430 Connecticut. And we really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us, because we love the street and we like to give our perspective, which you've heard from all of us. But I wanted to read the letter from the fellow who lives next door to us, Ed, because I just thought he captured the feeling of what it's like to live on our street. So he's not here today, and it's only a page and a little longer, so hope to not take up too much of your time. But he says, "My name is Edward Fedorovich. I own 410 Connecticut Street. It has been brought to my attention that despite last year's council vote to build a sidewalk from Estero Boulevard to Shell Mound and not from Shell Mound to the bay is in question again. While I won't be able to attend, I wanted to again voice my opinion on this matter, which was already voted on last year. There are currently 14 homes, 7 on each side of the street from Shell Mound to the bay. I know many of these neighbors, and their opinions about overturning the decision are the same as my family's stance. First, it is not necessary. Living on the street gives us insight into the topic. In the last 2 years, we have had hundreds of walks to the Mound House without issue. Never saw anything dramatic or unsafe, and just 2 weeks ago, I taught my kids to ride their bikes in the middle of the street, and their ages are 7 and 10. Hours and hours went by without a single vehicle except the maintenance golf cart from the Mound House. We love how quiet our end of the street is in terms of vehicles. A vehicle traffic counter, a road tube, would even support our experience. Another supporting example is the small parking lot at the Mound House. They are aware there's minimal vehicle traffic and little need for parking. There's an overflow lot for special occasions, but that's empty most days, and when it's full, they provide an electric golf cart to taxi back and forth. Next, that small portion of the street is labeled dead end, and the Mound House entrance bay is close, within sight. There is hardly an opportunity to speed in such a small distance, especially after stopping at that stop sign. A safety issue I have experienced on multiple occasions is vagrants who likely live on abandoned boats, dock a dinghy at the Mound House, and walk west on Connecticut. I think they're going to the church for food or simply using the Mound House for a free dock. Regardless, I am all for helping people in need. It's just that I've had a couple of concerning experiences. I've been approached in my front yard by a man asking for money. Another vagrant actually knocked on the door with an outlandish story. She was clearly strung out. She asked to use my phone. I allowed her, but I kept her at the door. She began to walk in when I turned around to get my phone off the table. I felt like she was scoping out my home. It was suspicious behavior, to say the least. When she couldn't remember the phone number she wanted to call, after several tries, I had to firmly ask her to leave. We don't need these elements closer to our families and 15 feet closer to our front door. The charm of our island comes in question here as well. A wide sidewalk in comparison to the width of the street is awkward. It tears through our front yards, stealing the island appeal and the curb appeal. Think paved paradise to put in a parking lot. Several of the homes in question are modest in size and built 50-plus years ago. A city-style sidewalk does not marry well with the predominantly 1960s-era beach houses on our street. Further, many of the driveways are short, and it's likely that vehicles need to park in their driveways will cross the sidewalk or park in the street. This is also a safety risk for pedestrians and bikers on the sidewalk. To recap, and this is from Ed, vehicle traffic is not a safety issue in our direct experience. A proposed sidewalk has a negative impact on our homes, our living experience, adds yet another city construction project in our front yard, affects aesthetics of both the island and our properties, and wastes money, and most importantly, creates a higher risk for our families. We are passionately against the sidewalk proposal. It is disheartening it's come up for discussion again, months after the previous decision was made. The decision was to build a sidewalk from Estero Boulevard to Shell Mound and not from Shell Mound to the bay. Please, well, actually, he doesn't say, he just said, if there are any further questions, please contact me. So that kind of sums up, I think, the way most of us feel about the sidewalk. So thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Roz.
William Grady will be followed by Kurt Schroeder.
Good morning.
Morning, I'm William Grady. We now have a new council, and one of the first things some members want to address is the safety on Connecticut Street, and more pointedly, the stop sign, from the stop sign to the end of the bay. The latest reason to build a sidewalk is being couched around safety. They are very concerned for the pedestrians. Wink News did a piece that highlighted, with a big tourist distraction down the end of this road, not having a sidewalk, that's a recipe for disaster. We asked Wink as they were down there who called them, and they said someone on the council. When we first heard about the sidewalk a few years ago, we asked several members of the council about it. They did some research and found out that the town had requested for $500,000 from MPO years ago. The facts are that the people asking for the money never asked us, the homeowners, what we thought. The facts are that they don't seem to care about what we think. The homeowners who have lived here are the most affected, and we are the most qualified to talk about the safety issues. You haven't done any traffic studies to prove us wrong. We are forced to be very aware of what's going on our street because of the draw to the Mound House and all the extra traffic that causes. The homeowners in the council came up with a great compromise last year, and a number of us had discussed it. Our belief is that this is the best solution to solve the safety issues. All of this extra traffic is now our new normal. Roz and I are building a large addition, adding a garage, and I see people and talk to people day in and day out who walk, who ride their bikes, who stop and talk to me. I've now formed lots of great relationships with people walking down. I talk to Allison, I talk to Seal. They ask how it's going. These people have put their life souls into doing things for the Mound House. There has never been a traffic issue, a safety issue, while I'm sitting there talking to people on the street looking at our property. We lived through all this. Last year, Mike Cleary, one of my neighbors, and I watched as two sheriffs arrested somebody in front of our house at 10 o'clock at night. We live with all this, but enough is enough. It's insulting to think that someone dreamt up this idea who doesn't live here, didn't ask us what we thought, and yet still wants to put this additional headache closer to our homes. We'd like to ask the members of the council who's thinking about the homeowner safety. What's our privacy, what's our peace, and what about our well-being? Who's thinking about Wendy, who lost her husband 6 years ago? She's lived on this street for 28 years and is one of the most pleasant people I've ever met. Where do her children park when we have a sidewalk 15 feet closer to her? When they take down a half dozen trees that are in front of her house, people get to look right in the window. Who's worrying about her safety? Who's thinking about Pam, who lost both her parents within months of each other, and they've lived there for over 30 years. They live in this beautiful home right across the street from the Mound House. Her dad, Paul, as Roz said, planted frangipanges in front of our house. I've now taken cuttings from that and put them in the back of our house because of our new remodeling. Pam puts up more of the headaches than any of us. When they come down the street at all hours of the night, and I have to say the Mound House has done a great job now of locking down the gates, so it's harder for people to get in. But where do these people park? Right in front of their house. Who's worried about Richard and Dixie? I met the mayor here of our street 20-something years ago when we bought our house, and I can remember asking Richard about who someone was, and the first thing he said to me was, what kind of dog do they walk? But Richard's the type of neighbor who would do anything for you, who's worrying about Richard and Dixie's privacy, who's worrying about the fact that they've lived here all these years, and we as neighbors have to deal with this. Ed Fedorovic talked about vagrants walking to his house. I watched as he spent the day training his kids how to ride their bike. Little Eddie and Leah, they're just the cutest little kids in the world. Who's worried about their safety? Last year I called the police at 10:30 at night. After a while you get tired of, do I call? I don't want to look like the dummy on the street calling. Well, they showed up very quickly. We walked around all the neighbors' homes. We didn't find anything. They then walked through the Mound House parking lot. And
Mr. Grady, I need you to wrap up.
I am. They came out about 15 minutes later with two guys who were fishing at 10:30 at night. One was a nurse from Minneapolis. They weren't drinking, so they let them go and they escorted them. Who's worrying about our safety? I'll conclude. We live here, you don't. We put up with all the extra cars, the traffic, people parking in our yards, all the extra headaches that other homeowners don't have to live with. And now we're dealing with movie nights and music nights, which brings more traffic at a later time of the evening. What about our privacy? What about our property values? What about our safety? We'd ask that you stick with the resolution that we came up with together a year ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grady.
Schroeder, followed by Brittany Sparkles.
So I would just ask you all to please stick to the 3 minutes. I don't want to cut you off, but it is a courtesy to everyone. Thank you.
Morning, council members. Can I give you some photos?
Yes, you certainly may, and if you could give them to Michelle as well. If you could give them to Michelle as well for a copy of the record. You can give her mine. Yeah, she's got to have one.
We can share.
Yeah, I'll share with.
We'll share.
Yeah.
I'm here to address a code compliance issue at 405 Harbor Court, case number CE Charlie Edward 18-0935. Remove the roof over the dock. Approximately 1 year ago, I called the town hall and was connected with Ray Blake for someone to visit our property to discuss the dock, a pool, and a seawall project. Ray's a geologist, not a building inspector. She said we didn't need a permit for the roof over the dock, and my neighbor is a witness to this. On February 6th, we received a letter stating we must abate the roof within 60 days, just 2 months after it was built. We never intended anything illegal. We called you out to the site for this reason. We told Ray we wanted a roof over our dock like our neighbors, and we pointed down, and the whole canal is full of them. She would have said, if she would have said no right then, I wouldn't have wasted my money. We've been totally transparent from the beginning of this. We pulled permits for everything. At my last meeting on April 10th, your new inspector, Carl Benji, said all the roofs over the docks are coming down, with a laugh. I told him there's nothing funny about it. I told my neighbors about this comment, and one said I was dragging them under the bus. My wife and I are just trying to improve our property, and now we have neighbors that hate us. We don't understand why the code says you can build a roof over a boat, but not over a dock. But yet there's a roof over the Matanza Park Trail dock and approximately 40 more covered docks on the island. I've tried emailing Sarah Probst on March 5th and April 10th about getting a variance or the process. I haven't gotten a response yet. We haven't slept good in 2 months because of this. Please don't drag our neighborhood into this. They've enjoyed their roofs for years. I'm praying you can do something to help us here. Let us know how to proceed. We haven't received a magistrate date yet. It's been 2 months and 15 days, so that time limit has gone past. Thank you. Kurt Schroeder, 405 Harbor Court.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Is your phone number on the card that you signed up for with
Email
Michelle?
is. Email.
Is his phone number there?
I can give it to you.
Yeah, if you would, just put that on there, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Schroeder. We'll get back with you. Who's next to speak, Michelle?
Brittany Sparkles,
Brittany Sparkles.
followed by Patrick Rinaldi.
Hi, now for something completely different. Brittany Sparkles, legal name Brittany Stefan, in case you need that. I've been kind of emailing a bunch of you back and forth for the last 4 weeks about my street performer permit. I know that there's been some question about the ordinance in the area because of some vendors that were trying to get the permit. I've emailed my proof of insurance, my website, my 12-year resume of performing all over the world. I graduated a professional circus school in Australia, and I've been doing this a really long time. I promise I'm a performer. So I've been back in the area for about 4 weeks. I started emailing roughly when I got back, very little response. And then last week we were here, or 2 weeks ago rather, we were here at the meeting, and it was said we would discuss it this week. So I was really hoping to get some work, because I haven't really been working for 4 weeks because I've been waiting for this permit, and it's been a little tight. So I guess what I'm hoping to do is perhaps some special consideration for the permit so I can get back to work. It's really my pleasure and my joy to entertain people, and I hope that I can be an asset to the beach here. I am a local Southwest Florida girl now, originally from New York, but my father and my mother own a business in Fort Myers. It's a home inspection business, and my sister is a local social worker. She works for One More Child. She does foster family licensing. Anyway, so yeah, just to be considered, please, for my permit so I could get to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you.
Patrick Rinaldi.
Morning, everyone. Patrick Rinaldi, Rinaldi Parasail Inc. on Fort Myers Beach. And I'll stick to the script. I've reached out to all of you individually and invited the opportunity to meet with each of you personally. I apologize for my ignorance of Robert's rules. Due to the outcome of the previous meeting, I felt as if the rug had been pulled out from under me. I would have had the appropriate amount of time between the first hearing on April 1st and the second hearing that was originally scheduled for May 6th, a period of 5 weeks, to answer any questions or concerns you might have. Instead, I find myself fighting for my life as a business owner. I have safely operated Rinaldi Parasail for almost 30 years on Fort Myers Beach. I have always been a good neighbor and supportive of the town, its councils, and committees. I went through all of the proper procedures to procure the location to place this parasail-only license at Edison Beach House. Upon receiving the zoning verification letter and subsequent parasail activity license permit, we began contracting for the advertising of the location. We also began operating from 830 Estero by placing the appropriate buoy lane and a booth on the beach. Unfortunately, this only lasted 4 days. I want to be able to put any concerns you may have regarding safety to rest. If that takes bringing you out on the water for a site visit to achieve that goal, I would be happy to accommodate you. My personal experience is that the view from the water to the beach is much different from the beach towards the water. In regards to the deal with Edison Beach House in the town, I have no information regarding any opposition to this request. It would be of benefit to our clients, visitors, and locals alike, and practically no impact on the community. Another advantage will be relieving some of the traffic congestion that currently exists on the south side of the pier and the inevitable impact that is going to arise from future improvements in that area. My livelihood is dependent on the placement of this license. Additionally, my business employs 6 people year-round and 10 employees during season. There are no viable alternatives for the placement of this parasail license and no landowners willing to host us. I want to be able to run my business in a safe, convenient, and family-oriented location. Please give me the opportunity to accomplish this, and if you wish, a trial period of 3, 6, or 9 months to evaluate the operation. I want to continue operating my business on Fort Myers Beach, and I would appreciate your help in achieving that goal. Thank you very much.
Patrick?
I have no other requests.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Anyone? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, you may. Please, come on up. Sir, you'll be next.
My puddle jumpers today.
I see that. Ma'am, you have to go, Ms. Keller, you need to go right there to the microphone and say your name for the record, please.
I didn't fill out a form because I don't want anybody to know who I am.
We know who you are.
Because I love birds, you know?
Yes, ma'am.
And since this is a critical area with the 3 islands, I've just decided that...
Ms. Keller, you need to say your name for the record.
Oh, you want to know who I am?
I know who you are, but you need to say your name for the record, if you would, please.
Mrs. Hossfrost, do you know my name at all?
I do know who you are, and unfortunately, the mayor is correct. You have to say your name for the record.
I do. Ms. Keller.
Mr. Herron, do you know my name?
Ms. Keller, you must say your name for the record in order to speak.
It's Lucinda Keller.
Yes, ma'am. Now proceed.
I've lived here for 42 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Actually, I came here through the swing bridge in 1974, on June 24th of 1974. So I've been here a while, and I love everything about this island from north to south. I love the trees. I love, I'm a naturalist. My God, I'm a naturalist. That makes me an enemy of some people. But the way I look at it is if I have a tree in my yard and these herons, their terns actually, are nesting 40 to 50 feet above sea level, something's going on in those three little islands that are critical to their environment, and they need that area. We don't need it. All I'm saying is we have to have something for the birds and the indigenous species that have lived here and come back here, the turtles, everything that is natural. We have to leave something for them. We have to have something for them. And if I have to fight this further, I will, because my mind's made up, okay? I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you, but my mother's Irish comes out sometimes, and I just, I make up my mind to something, and I just can't quit till it's done. So anyway, have a good day. All right?
Thank you, Mrs. Keller. Appreciate you being here. Yes, sir. I know you spoke before, and I forgot your name. You talked about the road project.
Tim Shadle.
Yes. Hi, Tim. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you. Good morning, Council. I just wanted to talk about some things that I heard you discuss at the last planning meeting, which were all pretty good. The mooring field expansion, kudos. I think that's great. Crosswalks being lit, great. Something I mentioned about a year and a half ago, covering trolley stops. That would be very nice if they all could be covered if possible, and I think that you should really look at the advertising. That's what I had suggested the last time I had spoke about it. Allow advertising, which will make it more affordable, and it can be done very creatively with not only permanent, but maybe canvas type coverings, things like that. Something that I did and didn't hear that sort of bothered me was when Assistant City Manager Doug Muir, not sure how to pronounce his name, he had spoke. He basically just briefly went over it and said, that design and construction are going good. And council didn't really question him much after me coming a year and a half ago and several other conversations here and with other people, including Doug and people that work for the county and construction people and Darren Brown from Christel. But nobody really mentions this center paver issue, and it really bothers me. Especially it bothers me with Doug. Not even, I had just had a conversation with him 2 days before. No mention about these center pavers, and it really bothers me. And I'm telling you, this isn't going to be a project that's going to have to be gone over and over and over and over again, where these pavers, you can't just lift a few of these to fix this problem. They've all got to come up. They're all going to have to, the stone's going to have to be recompacted. They're going to have to be put down. And I'm telling you, I've had conversations with many, many people in reference to this issue, from the county, city, design, construction workers, and everybody tells me the same thing. We don't understand why they're doing it this way. It's moving around. The thing's going to have to be gone back, redone, replaced. It just blows my mind that everybody just sort of goes right over this issue and is not making a big thing about it, because it's going to be a traffic issue for a long time to come. But other things that I wanted to mention, the clock issue. You guys had talked about that. Just a little thought. I was thinking maybe you wanted to add another clock to the other area. How about make a backwards clock and a saying that goes along with it, like We'll take you back in time, Fort Myers Beach, or take you back in island time, something like that, something interesting. But also just the other two properties that sit empty that are parks, the county, the cities. I really think there could be a lot more done with these things to make it very interesting. Even maybe a Ferris wheel on the one side where there's two volleyball courts or something that where people
Tim,
back and forth.
Thank you very much. I saw somebody else's hand raised. Yes, Catherine.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Katherine
Catherine.
Wallace, Denora Boulevard. Mentioning Connecticut again, I've worked with the Mound House for years and years, so I'm connected with Connecticut Street. That street is one of those magical side streets where folks amble down the street, amble down the middle of the street. A car comes along, you move to the side, just like any other comfortable neighborhood street in the world. All 5 blocks of Denora Boulevard, we amble down the street. All the red coconut people come, amble down the street, bike down the street, all 5 blocks. We need to maintain that capability from Shell Mount to the bay. Why change it? It's safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Okay, I'm going to close public comment. Thank you all for your comments. The next item is local achievements and recognitions. Joanne, would you like to start?
Try to be quick. Just thank you to this community. They're so generous. The Fort Myers Beach Art Association did their student scholarship show, and the Community Foundation did a fabulous spring fashion show, and all to benefit our children and our families and those in need, and we really appreciate it. Thanks to Lee Tran. Everyone loves our trams. Thank you, thank you, thank you. 3, we'd take 5 or 6, wouldn't we? Just a reminder, the Crab Leadership Conference is coming up May 2nd and 3rd. It's a 2-day conference. It's free, but you must register. There's presentations and tours. You learn all about the town, and it gets you to know enough that you can really become involved in the town. So if you want to, you can email Christy at fmbgov.com. Christy is Christy at fmbgov.com, and pre-register for May 2nd and 3rd. Turtle season begins May 1st. Remember to be good stewards and turn out your lights or get the correct light bulbs, and call Ray Blake at Town Hall if you'd like her to come out in the evening and evaluate your property and let you know if you're going to be in compliance or not, or what light bulbs you might need. They're happy to help. Let's be good stewards. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. Roxanne?
I would just also endorse the leadership conference. I attended it many years ago. You would think that something put on by the government would be boring, and it is definitely not. Everyone really enjoys it. I heartily recommend that you attend and experience all the things that they can teach you.
Thank you. Ray?
I don't have anything this morning.
Bruce?
Nothing.
All of mine have been mentioned. We'll move on to the next item, which is advisory committees and reports, and that's the local planning agency. I don't see Megan here. Is anyone else here to give us a report from the LPA? We'll move on to the next item. Which
Excuse me, Mayor. I believe that the chairperson for CRAB and the Marine Resources Task Force, Bill Veach, would like to address the council.
Okay. So the chair, Bill, come on up.
This will be quick.
Okay.
Okay, the first thing is the Marine Resources Task Force. We want permission to do another experiment in the Bay Oaks property. I'm not really sure what the timeline is, but we had a discussion about different types. We did the glyphosate-free experiment, and most of the non-Roundup ones did work. We're waiting to see how they come back to kind of give a final report on what that did. But we're thinking about trying some different types of turf grass, some ones that are made for the neighborhood that don't require the fertilizer and the water, as a way to demonstrate to people that you don't need to fertilize your lawn if you put in the right grass. I'm not sure if we'll have enough time when you're actually planning on breaking ground at the Bay Oaks property, but we're willing to take the risk. If it doesn't work out to be convenient for the timeline, then that's all right. So we just want your permission to put some grass on that property.
Does anyone object? I don't think we object. No one objects. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, and the second one is crab. Thanks for mentioning the leadership conference. Becky Weber here is doing a great job on coming up with a mobile application for the town. Part of it has maps, and we have things like, you can find the nearest bathroom now to where you are in the town. And we talked about what we're going to put on those maps, things like beach accesses. But one thing we kind of stumbled on was the suggestion that we put, among the other public items, is should we put churches on the app? Because we know that we're trying very hard not to put any commercial entities on there so the town doesn't be seen to favor any particular businesses. Churches are nonprofits, but there's also kind of some legal distinction about maybe favoring any particular religion. So we're just wondering if we should put that on this app or not. Put churches on the app.
Churches are also safe places.
Is there a legal, do we have a legal opinion on that, maybe, just to?
This is the first that we've been asked to chime in on this, but I would say that there are some concerns that we need to make sure.
We'll let him think about that and get back to you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, it's nice to see you, Bill. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item. Mr. Murphy, would you like to introduce the Southwest Florida Commercial Waterman?
Yes. It's a pleasure to have these fellows down here today. This is a new program that's been started, and of course the guys will tell you the whole story. But I went to their formational meeting up on Pine Island a few months back last year, and this is one more arm in the fight for clean water. And these guys have a different approach to it. And with that being said, I'd like to thank Captain Casey Streeter and I forget the other guy's name, I'm sorry, from NOAA, and the other, your associate from the Waterman. But it's the Florida Commercial Watermen's Conservation Association. Take it away, Casey.
You don't have to do anything.
Gotcha. I appreciate the council for having us. Appreciate you, Ray, for setting us up so we can get out and spread the word of what our commercial fishermen in Southwest Florida are doing to help combat our red tide issues and water quality issues. No real need to go into what the red tide did to our communities. Again, I'm a commercial fisherman for hire offshore captain. I own a retail market, seafood market in Matlacha, and dealt and saw everything you guys saw over the last year. And I came to a point where I said, well, maybe we can do something as a community of commercial fishermen. Maybe we can reach out to NOAA, our governing body, and say, hey, what is your stance on these red tides? What can we do to help? Do you see what's happening at Ground Zero? Connected in with Dr. Mandy from the Science Center, brought fishermen together to talk about what we'd seen, impacts on the fishery, economy, so on and so forth, and was lucky enough to be asked to go on a research vessel, the Walton Smith, with Dr. Chris in October. And on that trip, I saw how hard they worked. I saw that they were in a state of discovery and finding things they hadn't seen or weren't aware of, and thought to myself, well, our commercial fishermen can partner with our science groups. Our commercial fishermen are on these waters 300 plus days a year, and we can help facilitate this testing, this data collection, this race for understanding. And on that trip, Chris and I brainstormed what it would look like, a citizen-style science group powered by commercial fishermen, supported by a community. And Florida Commercial Watermen's Conservation was born. And what we're doing and what we're trying to gain support on, we are doing offshore sampling, which is a very key component to our red tides, something that's, I'm not saying not being done, but not being done enough. Our offshore waters really hold the key to our red tides and better understanding for prevention or elimination of some of these key factors that are playing into these things. So what we're doing and what we've done is we've organized our guys. On Pine Island, we have, through community events and private fundraising, we've actually raised enough money for 4 pieces of equipment, water profiling equipment. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. I know that's important. And we are looking to help our community better understand and protect their most valuable resource, which is our water. And I'm going to let Dr. Chris jump in, and he can kind of explain some of the things that and the benefits thereof of partnering with fishermen and what we can help bring to the science community.
So I'm Dr. Chris Caldwell with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. As Casey mentioned, we were fortunate enough to have Casey come on a cruise with us in October. I have a presentation, but I'll go through that when it gets up. But one of the main things that spurred us into action is we saw a number of concerning issues, one of which was a giant dead zone. I mean, everybody's heard about the dead zone off of the Mississippi River. Well, you guys had one right offshore here in October when we were out there. And what really struck home to me is Casey was asking lots of questions about what's regular out here, is this normal? And the bottom line is we just aren't out there enough to have answers to those questions. And it's something that really hampers our understanding of red tide events and thus how to minimize their impact or even ideally be able to predict them so that we can better prepare communities like yours for future events. So we started thinking about ways in which, there we go. So, and just wanted to drive home some points about the red tide. You guys know very well a lot of the impacts, but this is just showing you the gag and red grouper declines that occurred in 2005-06 during that last major event. We expect them, and we have some data that it's as drastic, if not more drastic now, the declines that occurred last year. One of the things we've been doing and kind of what spurred this is going out to the local communities, especially the fishing communities. We are the NOAA, so we are responsible for governing the fisheries. So we went out to, and actually Casey helped organize one of the meetings right on Pine Island, our first meeting, where Dr. Mandy Karnauskas went there, interviewed a bunch of the fishermen. What we're trying to do is we understand that the fishing community in particular has been out on the water and has seen these events time and time again. They've seen them way more than scientists have. They've seen them way more than anyone else, really. So we're trying to talk to them so we better understand what their understanding is of how the red tides happen and how they not only initiate, persist, how they grow and move and all the dynamics associated with it. And then we want to get the data from the project that Casey's leading up so we can actually test these hypotheses. So we can use the data to determine whether what they're telling us and what we're seeing out there, if they all match up, then we have a really good understanding, we have really good foundation for how we can start to approach this issue in the future. One of our big things as we go out there and do these workshops is to develop these models of the systems. This is kind of how we translate just conversations into more of a scientific map of how the different events and consequences occur with one another. And what really is striking is, as I mentioned, we manage fisheries, but there's very few things you can control in fisheries management. And there's a lot of forces that affect the fishery. There's a lot of things outside of fishing that are causing changes, one of the major ones being red tides down here. So understanding how the red tides are happening, how they're affecting the fishery is critical to us being able to actually manage the fisheries correctly and do things like, I had Casey call me up when he said, came out that red tide, the red grouper fishery was overfished. And Casey said, it can't be true. We haven't caught red grouper in how many months it's been. It's just it's a terminology and understanding thing that we're trying to get back by working together and get past those and get a better future for the water and for the fisheries down here. And you guys know this, all the negative effects, but this is kind of what our NOAA plan is we want to document the impacts, and that's both in the ecosystem and the fishing communities, and then understand the bloom ecology, get better data, like Casey's saying, work through that data through all of our statistical analysis, and eventually learn and prepare. What I envision, we have future red tide events. Everybody here lives in the hurricane zone. We're all used to the seasonal forecast of hurricane impacts. I would like to eventually get to the point where we're putting out seasonal forecasts of red tide events so we can prepare the fishing community. Things like that dead zone, I want to make sure that we can understand that it's going on, get that information out to the fishing community. One of the really kind of powerful and kind of sad things was we're out there and it was the beginning of stone crab season and we see this giant dead zone and the stone crab fishermen are going, Casey's telling me they're putting their crab traps out and pulling up nothing. And if we had gotten them that information in a more timely fashion, a month ahead of time, they would have known not to invest their resources in getting those traps ready and going out there and putting them out. So we're trying to do a better job, and we think by working together and supporting programs like Casey's and supporting the fishermen to help us take these measurements, we'll be able to hopefully make a quantum leap forward in this area.
And I brought this equipment. I'm going to show you guys what it looks like. And I know a lot of people want to feel red tides in our rear view, but it's definitely not. and understanding, like Chris said, we're just on the forefront of this. It's important to get as much information and data to protect everybody, because these are fishermen issues, but they're local community issues. I mean, I think that everyone can see that if you're in this area doing business, living, whatever, I mean, there's no one immune to this. And this is not a Gulf of Mexico. This is a Gulf of Mexico issue. It's not a Southwest Florida issue. And I've spoken with other communities that have large fisheries, from the Panhandle, Tampa to the Keys, and other communities want to be on board with this. And Pine Island has done a great job embracing this, embracing their fishermen, and empowering their fishermen to help understand these issues. And our information that we gather goes to all science groups. I mean, we send it directly to NOAA, but we also will be posting it through our website to anybody who has the desire to see what we're bringing to the table. This is a loaner piece of equipment that Chris has given me that I've been testing with, and we're tracking salinity and temperature and dissolved oxygens and chlorophyll A's. We're going to be doing offshore water sampling as well, surface, mid, and bottom. We're going to be helping them find our offshore springs and continually testing our offshore springs. Being a fisherman and knowing what's out there, I know that there's things that need to be looked at that maybe haven't been looked at, that may be key factors or contributing factors potentially to our water issues, and that's important to me to connect that with science. And you know, we need Fort Myers Beach's support. You know, we would love, there's fishermen in this area that would love to have equipment on their boat. We would love to have them have this equipment on the boat. I know Chris and the other groups, anyone again who's monitoring these water issues, would love to have this data. They've told me. You know, their biggest expense in time with scheduling is getting out there. And when our fishermen can run offshore towards their group fishing areas or snapper fishing areas, and we can grab 1 or 2 samples on the way out and 1 or 2 samples on the way in, the net and information data is just, it'll be, I'd say 100 times what they're able to get. And it's not their own fault, but it's through funding and resources and time. So if we can connect that and give them so much information, more information than maybe they've ever had, maybe we can get to understanding better. And maybe we can protect our commercial fishermen as well. I mean, they're valuable. There's a lot of commercial fishing history in this area, and you know, it's definitely worth protecting, and so is our water. So our fishermen care. They want to have the opportunity to do this, and again, we would love to bring this from Pine Island to Fort Myers Beach and bring it down the coast and up the coast, because again, these are coastal communities' most valuable resources, their water, and you should own the science, you should own the data on these things. We should be able to spread it around and get answers, or get as many eyes or good minds on this as we possibly can. So, but this is what it looks like. This particular unit's connected through Bluetooth. It's got a cord, it's dropped down, it flips around. There's sensors on the bottom, but it's in a casing right now. But literally, it just takes a matter of a minute, 2 minutes, depending on the depth, to drop this down. Information's captured on this particular hand unit right here. The data is emailed over to them, posted to our website, and it's quick. I mean, it's extremely quick, and for fishermen to protect their livelihood and their resource and what they love to do and the water that everyone loves, definitely easy enough for everyone to do and get on board. Again, the desire for the fishermen to do this is stronger than the equipment that we have. So we envisioned that we'd have these units on everyone's boat, or we'll make it work with whatever we have because we're fishermen, but ideally it'd be easier if everyone had their own. We're doing boat sponsorships for private donation, to where we're putting placards on boats. So my vessel's sponsored by the community of Pine Island through a bunch of small fundraising, and we've got others that are private donation bought. Chris, these units, this is the second type of unit we've had. We're in a trial process with this one. It's very user-friendly. The other units were $6,800, I believe, or 70.
These are about $8,000 each.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're about $8,000, but the information that they bring to the table for everybody to protect them and create understanding is $1 billion worth of information, I like to call it. So my biggest fear is that we'll get on the track of where people out of sight, out of mind. And it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when, the way I look at it. So better to be proactive and create this baseline now with Good Water so we can track the changes, try to help them better understand it. Any questions or anything else, Chris, you want to add?
Ray?
Yes. Thank you, Captain Casey, for coming down and explaining that all to us. I'd like you to make one point, though, before you get done here, as to, although this data and so forth is particular to your industry starts up here, but everything that filters down to all of us at the local industry, at the local level. Expound on that a little bit, how it affects all of us, what's going on out there.
These water quality issues, I mean, that's our office. So, you know, we're seeing it firsthand. We're seeing the destruction. We see the changes. And we make our livings on the water, and everyone else is making their living connected to the water. And the important part is we can be that first line of understanding. We can be that first line of information. And, you know, we want to be. We want to protect what moves this economy and the ecosystems that we all love and the fisheries that we love. I mean, you should be able to come to Southwest Florida and have access to local seafood. It should not be a unicorn, if you want to call it that. I mean, we should be able to access stone crabs and shrimp and grouper, and it should be something, and that I know it is something that a lot of our tourists that we all depend on come to expect. And to allow us to do this portion and add it to our regular routine and the benefit that it brings to our science communities will be well worth it. And this is, again, it's something that we're out there 300 plus days a year, more than anybody. We see these changes. You know, the offshore waters, again, I've been told, are the key to all of these issues, and they're the least looked at. So when we're out there and we see these changes, like this last year, I saw red water, yellow water, tan water, green water. I didn't see a lot of blue water. And, you know, the one thing we need to remember is that it's been, red tides, what I've seen over the last 4 or 5 years, we're coming into these cycles with the frequency and the intensity, the duration, how widespread it is. I mean, it seems to be on the uptick. So, you know, I mean, we looked good this year, you know, but if you looked on the map, January, there was red tide to the north, there was red tide to the south. We were just clear. We were lucky. So, and again, the goal is to do this here for our community and then expand it into the other communities. But the model's created here, and this is a grassroots effort. And if we do it right here, which I know we could, definitely get done. I mean, these are strong communities. Other communities will get on board and be able to do the same thing, and we'll help them.
Joanne, you want to speak?
Yes, for Dr. Chris Kelbel, correct? My understanding is that NOAA, that's the Department of Commerce, right, currently has a program with commercial fishermen where by lottery, if your name comes up, you must allow someone to come on board for a period of time and test, correct, and be on board. Is that correct?
I believe so, but that's not in my office. So.
And well, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
I was asking how this interrelates, and then why NOAA doesn't just do more of these equipment instead of putting staff on a lottery basis on.
So what that, and I think what that's for, if I understand correctly what you're talking about, my understanding of the program is it's called a Fisheries Observer program, and they put them on the boat, but it's mostly to monitor what's being caught. They really don't do anything with the water quality, but it is a good point, and it is something we can look at as training them up to be able to do the water testing too. But,
it just seems if they're doing that and they're on board, they could be doing the testing at the same time. It would be efficient use of taxpayers' funding.
The Fishery Observer Program, it is for the fishery, and it's to gain a better understanding of how the fishing's being done, issues with bycatch, how your methods, and just to overall monitor how fishing is done in a particular area. The very important part of our testing are our set stations, which that slide has went by, but it's testing the same location. And we've got Boca Grande and Captiva and redfish in the river, Fort Myers Beach area to leave from. So when our fishermen are going to running their bearing to their historical fishing grounds, it's that same location. It's having that continual information of what is changing and how it looks at that moment at that spot. So to gather these offshore testings offshore and some of the deep water, I mean, look, I fish anywhere from 50 feet of water to 200 feet of water. And when my commercial guides go for 5 to 7 days on the offshore, they're in transit through, but the majority of their time spent in the offshore. So we have a handful of guys in our area that are able to get offshore and come offshore, whether for hire and combination of commercial for hire. I mean, Chris will be up here on the Walton Smith testing the end of the month, I believe, or relatively close next week. So he'll be out here testing. But we would, once this gets, and I'm testing right now, but once this gets in full swing, I mean, this water will get tested 5, 6, 7 days a week. So, you know, you can get a real-time image, an idea of the changes we're seeing.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that point of the systematic sampling. So what really hampers us is that we go out there on research cruises every so often. I go out, my cruises run every other month. They're historically funded to understand Everglades restoration impacts on the coastal ecosystem, so they used to stop at about Marco Island. We've extended them out up, but that just started in October. What we really need, when you do the statistical analysis, you need the same stations occupied at regular intervals to be able to understand how things are changing, what's normal, why are things changing, and that's what we're really missing in this area. That's where we're really trying to get the fishermen to help us with that.
If that data understanding is, as you said, critical to fishing management, won't NOAA be putting more of these out there themselves as well?
I would hope so, and I'm trying to, yes, I would hope so. There is a NOAA Red Tide program that is getting, well, I don't know where they stand funding-wise for the most current budget, but I would strongly hope so, and we definitely urge them to do so from our positions as much as we can.
Thank you.
Roxanne?
I just have a brief question. Are you scheduled or have you already appeared before any other town councils or governmental groups?
Grassroots. So Pine Island Civics. I mean, this is the real first elected official. No, we're honored. I mean, everything that's been done on the island is truly just through associations and things of that nature. Getting out there and speaking with the people who have been affected most and saw these things. And the ability to take a proactive stance to try to make a difference on these things, I feel like a lot of people wanted these platforms, and they were under the hope that they were being done, and it's not that they weren't, but they can be done better, and we can help facilitate that. I mean, again, this is fishermen doing something that's for fishing, but not just for fishing. And this information is valuable. We want to help in any way possible.
Bruce, you have questions?
Well, what can we do to help? I mean,
Exposure to the community. I mean, you know, we would love to be supported. We would love to connect into other communities. I know that there's a way to do that through the channels that you have in place. We would love to expand out into Fort Myers Beach with fundraising. I mean, you know, our money we raise or donations gone in goes to equipment. That's it. I mean, we want to purchase this equipment, and we want to get out there and do what our normal jobs are. And we want to be able to continue to do that, because another year of the events that we just went through, there won't be many fishermen left, and there won't be many tourists wanting to be here to go to the offshore. For what reason? You know, so it's a good sign to people that come and visit what our community and our area are doing to take this proactive stance. Like I said, it's better to be part of a solution to set back and wait for someone else to solve your problems.
I'm all for you, because I can attest that there's very few grouper out there.
Oh, yeah, no.
It is
Now
horrible.
you have an excuse, Bruce.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I've been making them all along, but I have a question for Chris. So the idea of some of this testing is to be able to forecast the impact and when it might happen, but what about minimizing red tide? What's the opportunities there?
I mean, that's tough to answer without knowing the causes, and that's part of why we need this data, is to understand what's causing it, and then it becomes a lot easier to reduce the impact. The one thing I would say generally, and I was glad to hear the turf grass comment earlier, is that anything you can do to, I mean, these are phytoplankton, so these are plants, so anything you can do to minimize the amount of nutrients getting into the water isn't going to hurt. And it'll probably only be helpful. But what we really want to do is understand the causes by the systematic monitoring, and then we'll be able to actually tell you, we'll be able to answer this question once we have that pinned down.
So if a fishing guy that goes out on a regular basis and has a little route, but he only goes out to, say, 100 feet or something. Is that beneficial, or do you need people to go out 200 feet deep?
Ideally, it would be about 200 feet. One of the things that we're interested in, if you look at the hypoxia, there was a big, let me see if I have it there. I think I skipped past it. There was a big stratification, which means there's a big change in temperature from top to bottom and salinity from top to bottom. So we need to get a little bit deeper to, yeah, okay. So yeah, where you see the red, that's the dead zone that we saw out there, and that corresponded with this big change in temperature and salinity from top to bottom of the water column. So we want to go probably about 200 feet at least is ideal, because you want to understand that kind of propagates up from the shelf break towards the coast. So we want to understand that propagation. It's one of our big areas of concern, because we don't know why, like where the nutrients are coming from in that bottom water, and that's what we want to understand. So, because the way it kind of sets up is that you have the phytoplankton, the chlorophyll, the red tides are on the surface, and then at the kind of where this stratification occurs, where there's a big change in temperature and salinity, you'll see a big peak in the phytoplankton there, and then below that's just bacteria that decompose and eat the phytoplankton, and that's why the oxygen gets lower. There's no primary producers there. It's all kind of bacteria decomposing the plankton.
Something important to recognize about our hypoxic area and the model that's there, that was 4 or 5 days after Hurricane Michael went through. So our water should have been very mixed up. Should have had a lot of surface oxygen coming down. And maybe Chris can speak to this, because some people had told me that it was probably a lot bigger before. And that was another thing. When I was on the boat and we were seeing these things, and they were seeing readings that they couldn't explain, you know, the big part of it was, boy, I wish we could have been here during the peak of this. You know, what did it look like in June? What did it look like in July or August, September? I mean, how big was it? And that's really what made me turn my wheels to say, well, I was out there. I could have told you what it looked like. I mean, I didn't mark fish, and this was before I realized we were in a dead zone. I was going to take the bottom machine off my boat. I thought it was broken. I mean, where I would fish all summer and be very productive, there was nothing. It was void of life, and that's really where I said, well, you know, I wanted to know what is known about this and what's being done about it, and that's how the whole series of events to connect in with NOAA in their groups and fishermen to come together to make some sort of difference and change.
Casey, so are you looking for funding from us, or are you looking to get your word out to find other people to help fund these machines for research? And maybe the answer is both. Just to kind of further the question from Mr. Butcher, what else can we do for you?
I think you hit it on the head, both. I mean, we would love Fort Myers Beach to sponsor a piece of equipment or help bring awareness to this community and others. I mean, again, these are community-driven programs. So, and we're, you know, affected here just like we are on Pine Island and everywhere else. So if this is something that a community can do and tap into something that they have on site, which is commercial fishermen, and that can benefit science, I find it win-win for everybody. And I mean, we want to do this for everybody.
Okay. And if I could just ask you about that dead zone. So that really looks to me like it's off of Hillsborough, Pinellas, Charlotte County. Is that the northernmost point of that? Looks like it's up.
Pine Island?
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Yeah. Down past Marco?
Yeah.
Again, and
us.
Yeah. So let me. Yeah.
And I want to reiterate, this is just a snapshot. As Casey mentioned, we don't
Sure.
know what it looked like when it was at its peak, because we know this wasn't its peak.
And what is this snapshot? What's the date of this snapshot?
It's October 12th to 19th is when
Okay.
we were out there. Last year.
That's amazing.
Last year.
again, 4 or 5 days after Hurricane Michael went through. And I know that there was 15 to 20-foot waves out front. So
Yeah, sure.
It's important. It'd been nice to know. It'd been nice for our crab fishermen to know, hey, save your resources.
Save your energy.
Don't go out. There's nothing there to be had. And, you know, we shouldn't lose these fishing stocks and these fishermen in the fishing industry. I mean, it's about protecting that and the people that live in the community. So they would have liked to have known don't go. I would have liked to have known, hey, all summer, don't fish out front where you should be able to fish. You know, but I mean, as fishermen, you're gritty and you try to grind it out. That's where you work.
Yep. Okay,
Madam
great.
Chair, I'll see if we can sum this up here. My goal in having these gentlemen down here was for the awareness aspect, to further what they're doing, and also for us to get involved with them. When I say get involved, my vision was for the town of Fort Myers Beach to purchase one of these monitoring devices, and to either to put it on one of their vessels or one of our local members of our fishing fleet, so they can take the measurements off of Fort Myers Beach. What we have here is a group of people that are willing to do the heavy work for us. And it's not just how many grouper they're catching out there or snapper or anything. It filters all the way down to who's selling a beer in our bars down here, to who's selling lunches up here, and who's putting heads in beds in our hotels. It's the whole spectrum. But it's all because of the water. It's all because of the water. So anything that we can do to encourage this and support this effort by these groups that are doing, again, the heavy work for us, I'm all for that. And I don't think it's a major investment, but what it is, we would be the first. We would be the first municipality or county government or whatever to jump on this project. My vision would be to get with Casey and the NOAA folks after we get on board and start selling it to the South. You know, we take it on the road and go to all these various town council meetings and county government meetings and sell it to them as well. This isn't an issue that's going to be solved on the federal level. This is an issue that's going to be solved on the local level. It's going to start here and work its way up. It's not going to start at the top and work its way down. So any opportunity that we have to participate in that and expedite it and help our friends over at NOAA with the data, I think we need to get involved. It's a small investment in our funds here on the beach, but it's a major investment in furthering this cause. And it's the start of something big, I think, and I think we should support these guys. I didn't put it on it wasn't put on the agenda as a funding item, and I don't know what the protocol is for that right now, because there was some question about that with an issue before. But if it needs to come back to the council at some further date, but it would be my goal for this council to support this group and support this data gathering, and hopefully we can start supporting these men and women and working every which way we can to support the people that are doing the heavy lifting for this massive problem that we have.
Mr. Hernstadt, I support this initiative as well. So what would be the, should this come back to us, or is this something that go ahead.
I think the best course of business is that if the council is going to have a program that's wasn't included in the budget, that there be a resolution appropriating money and authorizing the disbursement of money to an entity for a purpose. And if that's the council's desire, of course, we will prepare that item and bring it back to you forthwith.
Well, let's see what everybody else says before we go through. Go ahead, John.
I think this is a superb program. So please don't take my comments as not saying that this isn't a superb program. But this town council, the previous town council, actually, I think last time you were mayor, Anita, eliminated the policy in the budget of making contributions to 501c3s. We have a lot of them on the island. And we have several 501c3s that are also doing the water quality things. Captains for Clean Water, Coastal Water Keepers, we have Penny Jarrett. who's got a NOAA project on our island right now. We're using our own local funds from our budget to do our own water testing through our own environmental department. So my concern is that we need to really look at this within the budget and make a determination if we're going to indeed set aside a certain amount of money, what the criteria will be, take applications, and distribute the funds fairly that way. I'm not comfortable just all of a sudden reversing the policy that has been not making these contributions and giving to one when there's other water keepers out there. So I'm not saying that I wouldn't donate. I'm just saying that this would be a change in policy, and I think that it needs to be done in the budget process.
So what you're suggesting that it come through the budget process? Yes. Roxanne, how do you feel?
She took the words right out of my mouth.
Okay.
Roger recently indicated to us that if we wanted to put things into the budget, that we let him know, and that process is starting already, despite the fact that it comes to us in a couple of months or starts in several months.
Okay.
So I'd like it to be part of all that process, so we're looking at the big picture.
Okay. And Bruce, you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I would really like to support this, but I'm fine with doing it in the budget process.
Okay. Ray, you good with that?
Not really. There are.
It's just a slight delay.
How slight?
Well, the budget will have a preliminary budget come June, July.
Okay. That's fine, as long as I know now that we have the support. That would be great. I would prefer some sooner action than that. I liked Roger's resolution idea, but I also understand that you had a policy before. I do think that the gravity of what we've been faced with this situation the past few years could very well supersede some of this, but that's my own opinion.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to work along with the council, knowing that you do support this idea and that we can eventually fund these fellows and assist in this. So I was hoping we could be the first, and maybe we still can be, but I was anxious to take this down the coast. My dream was to have it from Key West all the way up to Pensacola, and that may very well happen one day, but not today.
Casey, I'm wondering if it probably would be great for you to speak to our Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, no,
And
I'd love to.
I'm sure Ray can help you set that up.
Yeah, I mean,
Because that would be
connecting with businesses and other private
Exactly.
donations without a doubt.
Exactly. Roxanne?
I just wanted to let Ray know that I do agree that the gravity of the situation is serious, but I think you've got to take into account that this is a particular group that has appeared before us, and we need to get the word out to the other groups, because they may want to come and say, hey, we've got a better program or whatever, and I'm not saying yours isn't wonderful, but I'd like to see Captains for Clean Water and other groups know that we are considering this possibility and consider it in that fashion so that it looks fair.
Yeah, no, and just so you know, I mean, I've spoken with water keepers, John Cassani, and also the guys from Captains for Clean Water. So, I mean, there's issues with policy that people take care of. And like John Cassani said, the offshore component is it's not tested. Our inshore water is tested to death, honestly. Yep. But the offshore component, which is the most difficult to get, is not. That's the key.
You're doing something different than the other groups.
No doubt about it. And again, and that's what separates us, and that's what separates, and maybe again that could be the key to the understanding that it hasn't been, because it's the most difficult to gather, the most expensive to access, and again, once or twice a month or whatever it would be is a small drop in the hat. Even a lot of the other groups, once a month testing is pretty regular, and that's the standard. So we want to get away from that.
Well, thank you. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, one other. Apparently, your fleet up there out of Pine Island is covered. Is that true, or do you need more testing devices for your group up there?
I mean, we've got a lot of fishermen that would like them on board. We've got enough for probably about 4 pieces of equipment, maybe 5, through some private donation. We're going to bounce them around, and it'll be a coordinated effort between our fishermen of who's leaving what pass and what particular location they're testing that day.
So do we have commercial fishermen here in Fort Myers Beach that
Oh, yeah.
would be appropriate for this?
Yeah, and it's commercial fishermen, and it's also your for hire offshore captains as well. You've got a large fleet of them. So, yeah.
Mrs. Keller, Mrs. Keller, you're not allowed to ask them questions. You can ask them after the meeting's over. Go ahead, Casey.
But you guys do have a large fleet of fishermen that will be traversing these waters and being able to
Sure.
access this information.
Okay. Anything else? Gentlemen, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you again.
We look forward to future conversations with you.
Sounds great. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
when Phil Beach was making his presentation, we had a volunteer did a lot of work on the app itself, and I didn't know if you wanted to just spend a quick 2 minutes just kind of seeing that real quick, just so.
Sure.
If that's
Be
okay.
glad to.
Becky, because Becky's done a lot of work on this.
Good morning, Becky.
Becky, here's the thing.
Oh, thank you.
Our force extraordinaire on this. Thank you.
Okay.
He did this all by herself, just FYI.
Well, thank you for allowing me to take a few minutes to show you just some screenshots of the mobile app. It is fully operational, and I showed that to the
Becky,
committee.
hold on a second.
Sure.
Casey, will you guys just step out so we can continue? Lucinda, if you want to go out with him, he can talk to you. Okay. Yeah, okay. Go ahead, Becky.
Thank you.
Yes.
So I'm just going to take a couple minutes of your time, show you what we've been working on. As you know, we made a suggestion that'd be great if the town of Fort Myers Beach had a mobile app for both residents and especially for our visitors.
Yes.
Many other towns have that. And so we developed a prototype. This is what it looks like right now. Okay, this is fully active, and it has not been published in the Apple Store or the Google Store yet, but it's fully working prototype. We have a section about Fort Myers Beach. Island Tools includes all of the fabulous cameras that are available on the town hall site, and Google Traffic. Yes, I live on the south end of the island, and boy, do I look at it.
Why?
Uh-huh. So it's real easy. I have it in my purse. I just click, and there I know when to go, when not to go. Parking and buses. We want our visitors to know where parking is available. I have the town parking sites, many of them. I don't have all of them available yet. How to pay for their parking. I also have access where they can see private parking, because we just want them on our island. We're not saying park anywhere in particular, but here's available parking. Okay, and we link to Lee Trans so they can see all the trolleys, buses, schedules, and where they're at. Public restrooms.
This is fantastic.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, keep going.
This
I'm
is
tickled to
This
death.
is the work of an advisory
I am
committee,
tickled
by
to
the
death.
way.
Go ahead, keep going, Becky.
Okay. Public restrooms. We did is put on their locations of the public restrooms, but more importantly, especially when you have a couple of little kids with you, is how close are they and how do I walk there quickly, okay? So we linked with Google Maps, click it, it'll show you the route to walk and tell you exactly how long each location will take you. Parks and Recreation, obviously we want people to go to Mound House, we want them to go to Newton Park, we want them to go to Matanzas. There's so many different places we have on the island. I've learned so much about what we have by doing this, and I have not added everything to it. This is really exciting because I'm learning. I've only been on the island for 7 years, so imagine what our visitors don't know. Beach and water conditions. I link to red tide maps, but I link to the whole state of Florida. I don't want anyone to think it's a Fort Myers Beach issue. It's not. Water conditions, tides, fishing. is linked there. Wildlife, I linked to about our turtles, our manatees, our dolphins, some really great sites. There's so much information out there. Beach event news, what's going on the beach, where you can go, where you can listen to live music, news, advisories, a lot of things I link back to. The town has a fabulous website and a lot of information on it. So I just pulled that information in so it can be seen. And I linked to the town's Facebook site. And just a couple of different things, what it looks like on the screen is I pulled a video of public access TV. PBS station had done a special in Fort Myers Beach, and it starts with the Clusa Indians. Anyway, I found it on YouTube. Okay. So I link to it. I tell people a little bit about Fort Myers Beach. Our island tools, yes, the icons aren't pretty, but I've only used free ones so far, okay? I don't want to spend any of the town's money. Okay, I've got Google Traffic. I've got all the traffic cams that are on coming out of the town of Fort Myers Beach. And also I link to construction, goes right to it. Here you go. This is how you get to your bathrooms. You just click on one and grab the kids and run. Okay. Parks and Recreation, all the town beaches, Bowditch, the Pier, Crescent Beach, Newton Park, Bay Oaks, Mound House. I haven't obviously done everything yet. This is a prototype. Okay. That picture was actually, of the background, was actually taken by me at Fort Myers Beach, May of 2017. That's what our water looks like when it's a dry season and we're not getting the releases from Lake Okeechobee. Sorry, I had to say that. Okay. So this is where I link to red tide and our water quality. Wildlife, I link to many sites, including National Geographic for Kids, about the dolphins and manatees, which is really great information, as you can see, and live music, and the town of Fort Myers Beach. I want to thank the committee for letting me show you what I've been working on.
I have to tell you something. That is exactly what that committee, what CRAB, in its inception was thought to do. That's exactly what originally we hoped CRAB would do. We thought it would be a calendar or some, 20 some years ago, we never thought it would be an app because we didn't know what an app was. But that's exactly it. That's brilliant. Brilliant.
I think one of the things at the last CRAB meeting was, one of the reasons for bringing it forward is input from town council. If you have any other items, topics, subtitles you would recommend adding in there, that would be great. And I know one of the questions that the committee had was, and they may have to work with the town attorney too, commercial, do we link to Chamber of Commerce so that anything that's commercial is all only through the Chamber of Commerce? So when you go to that link, that's commercial stuff, because this is a town app. It's not really meant to be business advertising. That's not the intent of it. And how is that contained or controlled? How do you visualize that? So there's some questions coming up, and if you have any thoughts or feedback, please let the members of CRAB know. Christy Corey is now the staff liaison.
Yes, and one other thing. So when Becky came to me, she said, I'm working off the free app, and I can't, I really can only get so far. And I said, well, how much does it cost for the software? And I don't remember the number, but it was a couple $100. And I said, well, let's just get you the software so we could kind of turn her and the rest of CRAB loose. This is what they've been able to take it to so far. Now we have a meeting set up with her to sit down with the key sort of public interface staff members, Allison and others, so that we can sit down with her and refine what she has there. In some cases, maybe just tweaking the titles and making sure that the town's information is depicted correctly. And then, of course, from there is to really go live and to continue to expand it. The last thing I'll say about this is, besides thanking Becky, is that a couple of days ago we started reviewing our strategic plan, and one of those things was how do we improve our public outreach, and I think this is just an absolutely perfect example of how we can do that collaboratively through the use of our committees and volunteers to really produce something that hopefully will be a tool for all our residents and visitors to take advantage of, as well as support our local business community. We'll find a way to do that as well, because I think that's critical. And I'm very pleased with where we are, and I'm really looking forward to being able to launch this to the public in the next month or two.
Bravo. Thank you very much.
Becky, amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Okay, so we'll move on. May I please have a motion for the consent agenda? The consent agenda is a resolution on the SBA investment accounts and an interlocal with Lee County and Fort Myers Beach for utility relocation.
So moved.
You got to use your buttons today,
Oh,
Mr. Murphy.
so
I already motion to approve.
And I've seconded.
And so I'm just waiting on Mr. Murphy and Mr. Butcher to press your buttons. And the motion carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you very much. The next item is administrative item A. We're moving the Connecticut Street Multimodal Improvement Project ahead. And so go ahead, Roxanne, are you leaning in?
I'm leaning in because I have a new piece of information. I think Mr. Hernstat would agree that it's critical that everybody know this before we have any further discussion. Because I take this very seriously, I reached out to Darla Letourneau of Bike Walk Lee to see if they had any statistics, studies, positions. I knew she had been at MPO watching this process all along. I didn't ask her to. She brought Don Scott from the MPO into the email conversation. And I couldn't share this with my council members because of the Sunshine Law. Don...
Till now.
Till now, yes. So I'm sorry that you're hearing this today, but
that's okay.
I was forced to wait until this point.
Let's hear it.
Don Scott indicated, and it's a very brief email from him without a lot of information, but what he did indicate was at this point in time, it would be impossible to lengthen the project to do it together. So that if the council decided that they wanted to do the rest of the sidewalk, it would not be at the same time. I think that's a crucial part of information for us to consider. I'm not saying this to influence anybody one way or the other. It's just a new piece of information of which we were unaware, and I felt it's crucial before we have any discussion that everybody was knowledgeable about that. Did I state it correctly from your reading of the email, Mr. Hernstat?
Yes, and had the councilor not brought it up, we had been in communication, staff had also been in communication with the, if the council were to elect to try to do a larger segment, how that would influence the folks currently working on the Mound to Estero segment, and basically they also had related to us that what was stated in the email.
So I am, you all know that I voted against the change to it originally. And I just want to say some things for the record. This project has been on the books for 10 plus years. It was last year that the project was changed. This would actually be changing it back to what it had been for 10 years. I spoke with Ollie at length. I spoke with Laura Stam at length. I emailed Roz. I tried to answer all the emails that I received. But this weekend, as I was thinking about all of this, a comment that Chelsea O'Reilly had made at one of our previous meetings had some significance to me. We've talked about marking crosswalks. We've talked about marking a lot of things. And Chelsea had brought to us this idea of this stamping of a crosswalk or a sidewalk so that people have not only a stripe, but something that is looks to be a path. And I thought that I'm going to change my mind on this Connecticut Street sidewalk. I think that our best course forward, as I talked to Ollie, I said, you know, maybe there's an alternative at Connecticut Street, at Shell Mound, to narrow the sidewalk, not to damage your hedge, Ms. Abraham, or or Wendy's trees, or anybody else's landscaping. Maybe there'd be a way to narrow it. And then I thought, well, why couldn't we do a path, a striped path on the street itself, and use this stamping that Chelsea talked about? So you get a significant sense that you're changing the dynamic. You're not on it. You're not going down a crosswalk. I mean, a sidewalk. You're now on a path to something more special. You're on a path, and you're also recognizing that it closes you in. Do you get a visual of what I'm saying here? So it kind of closes you in, and yet it still directs people where they're supposed to be going, as opposed to what I know you all are worried about, having people in your front yards. So I, as vocal, and I wish that I had had a moment to tell Allison about this, as vocal as I have been about the sidewalk proceeding down the end of the street, I really believe that this path idea, Roger, can you visualize what I'm talking about? That this, what I'm going to call a path, even some, bingo.
Yeah,
So
what I'm hearing, Madam Mayor, is that you're talking about perhaps widening the road slightly and then within.
No, I'm not even talking about widening the road. I'm just talking about, instead of everybody Catherine talked about people ambling down the middle of the road. I'm one of those people that walks in the middle of the road. And I definitely am an ambler. But the more I thought about it, even last night in my head, I was kind of drawing it out. I think it could be a really nice addition to the street, and obviously a significantly less impact to that section of the neighborhood. But I just wanted to say that out front because I thought it was important. And so it would be, remember Chelsea was talking about the stamping?
Yeah, I understand that. I think we can, you know, what the road surface is what the road surface is, but I think if you're talking about delineating an area for pedestrians within it, we have to look at the Uniform Traffic Manual and see what that says about doing that. Okay. You know, my just off-the-cuff concern would be that most of our roads are fairly narrow, relatively speaking, but we could take a look at the manual and see if we could find a way to make that happen.
Go ahead, Bruce.
In the bike ped master study that was done, it was recommended that you do that on some roads. Yep. They showed the pavement outlining. I forgot, it's something boulevard, I forgot what they call it, but it's precisely that, without maybe the stamping, but it's a painted area to designate that people and bicyclists use this area, and if a car comes, they stop and basically go one lane and let the other car come by.
Right, so just to be clear, you know, there's numerous roads that have pedestrian walkways basically, you know, incorporated into the road area versus some other pedestrian path separated by grass or whatever. The critical issue is the width, and we'll have to look at that.
You know, the only other thing.
Could I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I'm very much a process person, and what I see here is the resolution that we have before us isn't a viable thing to discuss at this point because of the information that I got from the MPO. So I guess what I'm saying as a process person is there are other things to discuss. There's various variations of what Anita has proposed. I would just say, why don't we just all agree that we're taking this motion, this resolution, off the agenda, or however the attorney suggests that I do that. The resolution in this form would not be going forward anyway. So want to waste everybody's time with having a lot of discussion today when we don't know the facts of what we're allowed to do and what we're not.
You know what, Roxanne, I was just trying to tell all these people who've taken their time to be here today, who are clearly upset with me. If I still believed that it was the best thing to do, I would still be telling you that. But the more I thought about it, the more I could see how this could be better. So, Joanne, you're requesting to speak.
I voted to support the residents previously, back when I was on the LPA. Twice that parking lot discussion came before us over my period of time. And the neighborhood, you know, we took into consideration strongly at that time the impacts to the neighborhood. And it was the second parking lot designed because of the lack of impacts that made it amenable to their sense of neighborhood that's so strong. And I do not believe it's a safety issue, and I will continue to support the requests of the neighborhood. If we're able to find some painting stripes or whatever that are effective, that's great. That would work. I don't believe from a safety point of view it's necessary anyway, but I'm thrilled if we could take the sidewalk off and let them have their neighborhood and then see if there's any other things that we could come to agreement about later.
Mr. Murphy?
I was on the original town council that voted to acquire the Mound House. At the time, it was a very worthy thing to do in my mind because the property was under threat of redevelopment for multifamily redevelopment. So, in my mind, it was good. It was a good thing to do. But on the other hand, I also knew that neighborhood would never be the same, and it's not. It's not the same as it was. But there are a lot of good things, and I know there have been some negative effects. The rallying cry in those days was no commercial intrusion into a residential neighborhood, and that was the rallying cry of the very man that voted to buy the Mound House originally. So, without speaking ill of the dead, and I won't do that. That was the effect, and although some very nice things have happened down there over the years, and it is a beautiful place, and I'm sure the neighborhood has grown to live with the Mound House, and although it's changed their lives, I'm sure that things, there's no turning back on that now. But so, rather than amble on any further, what I do think is that this is a pretty small thing that they're asking to retain what they do have left of what their neighborhood used to be like. I mean, who am I to tell them that they need sidewalks down in their neighborhood? It's not for me to say that, and I don't see the need for it, and apparently that's the direction we're heading. And as far as what's stamped on the road and everything else, I mean, if that's determined to be a necessity, I think they ought to be able to weigh in on that as well, and determine that if they want the road stamped up like that or whatever it's going to involve. Not that I have anything against that myself, but so with all that being said, I'm glad that the impression I'm getting today is that the council is going to do away with the notion of sidewalks down there, and I hope that makes you people happier down there.
So this is a blue sheet number 2019-63. I've called for a vote on the screen. If you would please, someone make a motion.
Would that be a motion to deny ordinance 1905?
Yes, I believe it
Oh,
would.
I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong.
No.
I'm sorry, yeah, I switched my page, sorry.
Resolution.
Would be a notice, or a motion to deny resolution 1911. Is that
Right.
correct? Or
Yes.
do we just not do anything and
You
it's dead?
can, if you want to consider it at a future date based upon additional information, it would be to table it for an indefinite period of time. And staff can or can't, depending upon further direction, put it back on a future agenda. If you're to decide no, then it would be to vote it down.
I prefer to make the motion to vote it down, so.
You could make your motion.
Okay, I'm going to move that we deny Resolution 19-11.
I'll second.
And if you could please use the system. Thank you.
It's a double negative. I'm not sure which way to vote. We're voting
to deny it.
So in order to deny it, you have to say yes.
Correct.
That's the problem with making
The
negative
motion
motions.
carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you all, and thank you all for coming. Okay, thank you very much. Next item is a public hearing, which is the, are you all going to leave? Or you want to stay and visit with us? Yeah, we'll get more information on it. Yeah, well, let's take a 5-minute break. Okay, it's 10:55. We'll reconvene at 11 o'clock. Thank you. You're welcome, Pam. I stood there last night. I stood there last.
I am. People.
Going north.
Okay, everybody, it is 11:03. Our meeting is reconvened. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's the first reading of Ordinance 1905. It's an LDC text amendment to Chapter 10, Street Design and Construction. Land Ordinance Number 1905, an ordinance of the Town of Fort Myers Beach amending Chapter 10, Section 10-296, including Table 10-2 of the Town of Fort Myers Beach Land Development Code regarding street design and construction standards, providing for inclusion in the code and Scrivener's errors, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. We're going to open the first public hearing and schedule the second public hearing. Mr. Herron.
At this point in time, it hasn't been advertised because we need to only schedule for first reading. So on second reading, we'll advise you that it's been properly advertised.
Okay, very good. Jason?
Good morning.
Morning.
So it's basically language to do a couple things. The edits will recognize the engineering standards and construction details that were created for the town. Some of that is taking old ones and updating them. Some of it was introducing a lot of new ones that we didn't have. I think you've probably individually discussed this with me. Our belief is that it'll help enhance and make it easier for applicants through different processes. They can pull one of those exhibits and put it in their plans or put it as part of their application, so it'll reduce the timing for engineering. The rest of the changes are to reflect the conflicts that would be in there. So for example, Table 10-2 has some design criteria that are no longer valid because the design criteria are outlined in the standards.
Yes.
And then again, further down in the section I'll give you a section number here. Well, number 4, 04, there's a lot of language struck out there again because it's different than what's in the design standards. So those design standards also include utilities, but it's most of the also roadways, and they can be updated from time to time as necessary and as other documents that they're partially reliant on become updated. For example, FDOT, Green Book Manual, or other standards.
Okay.
So we're asking for your setting the second hearing so that we can hopefully adopt the code changes.
All right. I see Roxanne, you're getting ready to push the button there. Go ahead.
I was concerned about the statement that says, contrary to professional, technical, and staff's recommendation, the mailbox detail has been removed based on LPA and public input. It was my understanding that we didn't remove things based on LPA recommendations. They came to us with that recommendation from the LPA, but just because the LPA says take it out, that wasn't our prior practice. So this seemed to be a change to me.
So based on the public input, we just decided to remove it as our suggestion or request from you. There's no sense in getting over whose mailbox detail was better than the post office or ours because frankly it's kind of a moot point on that specific detail. We generally include it as a standard just to help people, but if it was conflicting with the U.S. Post Office, you can still have to meet whatever their standards are. So we
But it's contrary to the staff's wishes?
No, so it was originally.
Because that's what this seems to say.
I don't think that was the intent. The original included it. It was brought to our attention that there may be some differences from what the post office recommends than from what the standard detail was in there. So we just removed it. You don't need to have a mailbox detail.
So this statement isn't worded correctly? Because this says contrary to staff's recommendation, it was removed. So staff now recommends that it be removed.
We followed that input from the public and went ahead and removed it.
Okay.
I think the basic underlying issue there is two things. One is that we think the overall item is so important, we don't want to have the one item, sort of sink the entire concept. We think it's hugely critical that we have standard details in place for people to know the requirements to do this work. And as Jason, and I'm sure others would mention, it's a lot easier for anyone who's going to do development on the island to know what sort of the rules of engagement are in advance and be able to look them up. The second thing regarding the specifics of the mailbox is this, that irrespective of what the town may or may not say as to what our standard detail is for mailboxes, if you don't put them in conformity with the U.S. Postal Service, they won't provide service. So, we could have some details that fall underneath the U.S. Postal Service's details, but we can't supplant their details. So right now, the way it works is that we don't have a detail because we don't want to have a sort of a conflict between, have a perceived or actual conflict between what we were asking for and the U.S. Postal Service requirements.
Thank you. I just wanted you to understand, though, if you say that the staff's recommending something and then you're not moving that direction, I take it very seriously. So I wanted you to know that, and I would appreciate further explanation when that's happening, because our staff are our professionals. I am not in many areas, and I rely on the staff's expertise. So when you make a statement like that, I take it very seriously.
Thank you. We appreciate it. I think the intent was just the difference between the original one that was floating out there from October to what we updated to now.
I understand.
And frankly, the priority list, that falls towards the bottom. So.
Thank you. Joanne?
I had the same question, and while we're on that, not to beat it to death, but happened to meet with the Boulevard folks, and I found out something I didn't know, and that is when the contractors for the Sarah Boulevard are being paid by Lee County to put all the mailboxes in down the boulevard. And there will no longer be 3 grouped together, anything that goes like out with arms, because that could be, if somebody drove off the road, that could come in through the windshield like a projectile. So there will you can't have more than 2 mailboxes together. They have to have breakaway posts, and the contractors are actually putting that in. So that was new information to me. I'm just mentioning it in passing since we're talking mailboxes. So, but my other quick question though was, I know you also have sheds. Like we have some shed drawings and some tiki drawings, don't we? Like, do we have other things that, I thought we had some things like you
Yes.
can come in and use these plans.
Those are called masters, right?
Masters.
So pools.
How do those relate to this?
They're different, but I would say that they're similar in the intent to make it easier and streamline the process. So instead of, if you're doing an LDO or a DO for a development order, for example, you can pull these utility and the site details, put them in. Generally what you'll do is you'll have a packet, right? So you have your site plan, you got your survey, you got your existing conditions, I got my proposed conditions, and then the engineers will include sheets that have notes and standard details. How do utility lines fit together? How do they connect to a lift station? How does the driveway detail look? It's more specific details. They'll be able to go through these details and pull out the ones that are applicable and stick them in the back, and then that's how the contractor ultimately builds it per those details. So it's to streamline it.
Yeah, well, but just to help the nuance of the difference between the point
Yes.
you're making, Counselor, the details that are here are sort of the 100% everyone will be in compliance type of details unless they ask for a waiver through the public hearing process. So these are basically every single property will meet these standards. The other details that we make available to people is sort of the cookie cutter. If this fits your situation, you could use it or you could design your own. But the difference is you can design your own in those. These are really the standard details that everyone should be following in all cases.
Thank you. That makes it clear to me. Thank you very
And
much.
that's a great point. Thank you.
Anything else, Joanne?
I'm done speaking.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. If not, may I please have a motion to move this to a second and final public hearing?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Generally, the policy of the council has been to open a public hearing.
Just, yeah. Let's see, I'm a little rusty. I didn't think any of these people wanted to comment. Would anyone like to comment? They may surprise me. They often do. Public comment is closed. Now we have a motion and a second. The motion is made by Mr. Murphy, seconded by Joanne Champ.
Okay, is it a motion to move it to second hearing?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
ma'am, it is. And so all votes have been cast, and it carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you all. You're getting good at the buttons.
That's the downfall of the buttons. You don't really clarify the
Yeah,
motion.
well, I should probably do that.
I think when you hit the button, you need to say what your motion is.
Okay, I will from now on.
And that was to move it to May 6, 2019 at 9
Yes.
a.m.
Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item on the agenda goes to administrative item B, and that is a special event request from the Taste of the Beach. Jackie Lisak is here if there's any questions, or if we'd
I'll
list
move
like-
approval just to get it going here.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve it. Is there a second to approve? Sure. And are there any questions for Ms.
Yes.
Lisak? Yes.
Well, no, the motion's been made, so I didn't have questions for the president of the chamber per se, Jackie. But I'm trying to understand why we're waiving fees for this.
Did the maker mover?
The
hold on.
electric
Joanne,
use.
Ray,
I'm sorry.
did you intend to waive the fees?
Which was it?
$280 or $60 or something.
Town electric, town water.
Total of $280.
I hadn't really given that much thought. Is there a hardship involved? Yeah.
For the record, Jackie Lisak, President of Fort Myers Beach Chamber of Commerce. We have, of course, as every year, increased costs for the tents for the sheriff personnel on the ground, increased fees from the fire department, which are extremely substantial, almost $2,000 worth of fees that did not exist last year. We also are asking the same from them for that. So anything you can do to help would be great.
I'll leave it in.
Roxanne, do you leave it in?
That was not I thought we were just moving it for discussion and not necessarily as
Michelle, can
to
you clear the
details.
vote, please?
Yeah. We're going to have to practice with this more.
Yes, we do. It just
And
doesn't allow
I
for any
apologize.
kind
It's
of.
just so trigger happy.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. So,
like Family
Joanne, were you
Feud.
finished speaking, Joanne?
No, actually, I mean, this is the actual use of the electric that the taxpayers are now paying for, and this is, I mean, okay, I'll ask Jackie a question. Is there a profit to be made on this? It seems like food's going to be sold and alcohol's going to be sold. It's not a nonprofit.
It is, well, it's given, the chamber is a nonprofit, 501c6.
Okay.
It is one of the fundraisers that allows the chamber to continue to work throughout the year. As you all know, membership fees are not enough for this chamber to exist. So it's one of the biggest events that we have that helps to keep the lights on and the doors open at the chamber.
I don't have a problem with reducing the permit fee, but the actual physical electric use at $60 and the rental space for the public space I would still charge for, so I would reduce it to $180, but that's just my feeling. I'm done
Hey, you're willing
speaking.
to, is there
I'm done
anybody else
speaking.
who has any comments?
And does anybody remember what we did last year?
I don't.
I think we did not waive any.
Did not waive any fees last year.
Always ask anyway. If you don't ask, you don't get, so.
Not to change the topic, but I had an additional question, and that was, I didn't see any site plan.
It should be in the packet.
And that's why I'm asking everybody else. I don't see it. Can somebody
This
point
is-
me what page it's on?
Yes, page 140.
It's the same footprint as all the years previous that I've been in charge of.
The reason,
it.
and
That's
here it
okay.
is, and I missed it. The thing I was looking for the site plan is I was wondering, the change that you mentioned is an additional stage, and I wanted to see where that was.
Yeah, it's in the parking lot that is owned by John Richard. Normally, there are vendor tents there. There will also be vendor tents there. And it's just being moved.
I don't see the stages on the site plan. Am I missing
There should be
it?
two different site plans.
Okay.
One that's an overview and one that's more detailed. Let me walk up.
No, stay where you are, Jackie. Well, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, just so I can see it.
There's a stage, we can see that one, but we didn't know. Okay, you're telling me it's right above the word vendor? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, any other questions, Roxanne?
No.
Bruce, any other questions?
Nope.
Ray, any questions? Now I'll entertain a motion, please, and whoever is going to make the motion, if you would, please. Now I can't click my vote button.
It's the first time
There
we've
you
tried to
go.
cancel one.
Okay. So whoever's making the motion, would you please say what your
I
motion is?
move to approve the request for the use of Bayside Park, town electricity, street closures, town barricades, open container, and water connection, and use of town right-of-way on Old San Carlos from 3rd Street to 1st Street, and waiver only of the $100 permit fee, leaving a total due of $180.
There's a motion by Joanne and seconded by Roxanne. If everyone would please weigh in on your vote. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much,
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, and the best of luck for you. I look
And
forward
I
to
hope to
attending.
see all of you out there.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. So the next item on the agenda is the Estero Water Line Replacement Project Phase B, authorizing the town manager to enter into a contract to construct Phase 3 of the Estero Water Line Project. Any questions for staff?
Yes.
Go ahead, Bruce. Bruce, do you know where your speaker button is?
You asked me if a question. You didn't say
I
press it.
Go ahead.
I was going to press it.
You get to see your picture up there if you press the button.
That's the reason to do it.
I have one sort of technical question I'm just curious about, and that's the boring, the 18-inch water main boring, 3,200 feet, $275 a foot. This is what they call, what, directional boring?
Yeah.
Christy Corey for the record. Yeah, it's directional boring. It's due to the fact of the limited right-of-way in that area.
So does that mean that you can't make a trench?
Correct.
And when you say 18-inch, is that for an 18-inch main, or is that for various different small size pipes?
That's for the main.
So then, where do we have 3,200 feet of 18-inch main?
Talking about the pipe itself?
Yeah.
So you directionally bore sort of a tunnel, and then you put the pipe in the tunnel.
I didn't see 3,200 feet of 18-inch main.
Are you looking in the quote itself? Is that where you're looking? I'm sorry.
Looking at those details there.
Bruce, maybe you can give them a better idea. What page in the?
Okay, you're on page 152 and 153, Counselor?
Yes.
Okay, on which one are you on, 152 or 153?
Yeah, I'm looking at 153. It says
Okay,
bore 18-inch water main 3,200 feet, and I was just trying to find the corresponding pipe or whatever you want to call it that matches up to 3,200 square feet, 3,200 linear feet.
I'd have to go back and actually talk to probably Mitchell and Stark or Brett when it comes to the actual quote itself and the breakdown of the linear foot.
I don't know why there's not a direct correlation other than to, but I will say this, that this is a unit price-based contract. It's not a lump sum or fixed price. So if they only bore 100 feet, it would be 100 times $274.80. But if it's critical for you to have us get those things in alignment, we will ask you to defer this item, and we'll bring it back at the next meeting. We just always are trying to keep these things on a timeline so that we can continue to keep things on schedule as best we can. But we'll be glad to bring it back if that's your concern.
May I interject? I pushed the button. Do you mind?
No,
On your point.
I don't mind. You did press your button.
I did.
Go ahead.
If you look on page 152, it says about 1/3 of the way down, the 18-inch DR water main, and it has 220 feet at $176.66. But then you go almost, the next page, almost right across from it, and it does, when it says the bore 18-inch water main, that's your 3,200 feet. And if you notice, that price at $274.80 is higher than the price of $176. So I'm wondering if the boring includes, like, when they bore it, you pay $274 a foot, whereas when they trench it, you pay $176 a foot.
So would the boring include the pipe, maybe?
That's
It's possible. I would have to get that clarified.
Okay. Well, if it includes the pipe, then
Makes sense.
If you want to just quickly jump to the next item, we can make a quick phone call and verify
Mr.
that.
Hernstedt, the next item is final public comment. So, Bruce, do you need that information?
I'm just really curious about it.
Okay.
I mean,
so-
I guess I wouldn't hold up the approval necessarily, but if something.
We can certainly get an answer to this, and we can just put this on hold for a moment and go on while you guys get the answer.
Christie will try to get
Well, let's
quick
see if there's any other questions, Christie. Mr. Murphy, any questions?
You're just curious about the extension, about the extension. Right, the price extensions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a reasonable question. I mean,
Roxanne,
they
any
can
other
come back with that.
questions?
I'm just saying, I hope we put this through because I've been praying for more water pressure on Egret Street for years, and it's finally going to get past me.
Okay, Christie, see if you can get the answer for us, and we'll move on for a moment. So that item's on hold. And we'll go next to final public comment. Anybody have any comments to make? No?
Yes.
The smiling, oh, yes, Tim.
It won't be about center page. I think, to me, and
Tim, say your
probably.
name- say your name for the
Tim
record.
Shadle.
Yeah, thank you.
Island resident. And I think there are 5 main issues that probably affect everybody that lives here and visits here, and that's health, safety, water, parking, and traffic. I think we have a unique opportunity right now with a big parcel sitting right next door that's available, that I just called actually this morning to try to find out a price, but apparently they won't give me a price. There may be a price, but they said they were leaving it to the open market to determine the price. But I think it's a very unique opportunity for the town, and I think you should really consider, if you already aren't, looking at that property as a possible place for a parking deck. There are very few places on the island that are available that have that much land, and the location is perfect. There's plenty of room for transit to pull in and pick up people, drop off people. I just think it would be a very good idea to take a look at that property for possible parking. And for traffic flow, a couple suggestions, one of which there's a trolley stop right when you leave the island going north, right at the light at Times Square, where the trolley stops right in the road. There's no pull-off space there at all. There's a big empty lot sitting right there. Somehow, I hope in this new traffic study and design that they're going to look at that, because that's a terrible place for a trolley to be stopping going northbound off the island. And I think also there are many places that walkovers could be constructed on the island that would really alleviate traffic a lot. And I don't know all the safety concerns and financial concerns about it, but I think it'd be worth looking at if possible.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment is closed. We'll move on to the town manager's items. Mr. Hernstedt?
I just wanted to advise the council of 2 things. One is that to do our repairs of our existing apparatus in our mooring field, the existing mooring field. We have received a notice on April 12th from the state FWC, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, that we received a $40,000 grant that represents 40% of the overall project costs of $404,730. So I'm very happy to be able to announce that to Town Council and the public today. The second item is that we are improving the town's fiber. We're doing that to help us deal with many service issues. You've heard people sometimes come here to public comment and say, I can't get on. We don't have enough bandwidth here in the building, and service speeds and phone system issues and a variety of things. So that project has been underway. We've been advised by Xfinity, who is upgrading our fiber, that they hope to have the cutover done within the next 2 weeks. So once that's done, then we could begin to actually start replacing phone systems, replacing routers and other equipment. But I'm pleased to announce that that project is well on its way, and as a result of its completion, there'll be better service for the public in this building and other town facilities. So we are making progress there. And I guess in terms of the prepared items, that's what I have for this morning.
Any questions for Mr. Hernstadt?
Yes, could you repeat that first item about the grant? I got
Yes,
jumbled
so
with
this
the
is a
numbers.
boater infrastructure grant. It has to do with our existing mooring field. So, we have those mooring balls and they're anchored into the seabed. And of course, we're very concerned about them being in good condition from the standpoint of, if they were to come loose while you were at anchor and your boat hit somebody else's boat, we would get drawn into a controversial situation. So keeping those in top-notch condition and replacing them within the manufacturer's specifications is a critical item for us. We replace a certain number per year. The number that we would spend to replace them is $104,730 for those scheduled to be done in this upcoming, not fiscal year, but year. We apply to the state, specifically the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, for a grant. We were notified on April 12th that we received a grant of $43,000, so that represents roughly 40% of the project cost that the town won't experience as an out-of-pocket expense.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Hernstadt? Roger, I'd just like to ask you, we have this young woman, Brittany, who has been here several times now. She's kind of caught in a glitch.
Yes, she is.
Busiest 2 weeks of the year coming up, this week and next. If there's no objection from the council, is there a way to give her a temporary permit until our next meeting?
Well, clearly, it's up to the council to do whatever it'd like to do. When this whole issue of the performers originally came up, we stated that we would like to do a review of the code, and there are some meetings with the street performers to get their input, and it sort of got dropped back about a week or 2 weeks ago in the staff's hands. And at that point in time, I said, we need some time to go through it to see if we have any concerns with the ordinance. And we may come back in 2 weeks and say, we don't have any, it's fine as it is. But I know of one that the staff is concerned about, and that is, right now the ordinance covers basically all the way from Times Square to Bayside Park, and whether that's appropriate or not. So that's at least one thing we're looking at.
Madam Chairman, excuse me. I'll make a motion right now that we issue a temporary permit for this young lady for the 2 weeks coming and review it after the expiration of that temporary permit.
For a second of that motion?
A second.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
Okay, I would make it to a little bit longer, only because when you have first reading, you can have a second reading if there are any changes, and if there are no changes, then whatever, so you might want to make it for, 30 days or something like that. Just
I
have a
will
little
amend
room.
that motion to 30 days.
Second.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this? Is there any?
I do have a question.
Yeah.
I seconded
Yeah,
to get
I was
things moving.
Go ahead.
Do we have an actual declared moratorium on granting these? I don't remember ever hearing about it.
Well, I would say, I don't know if it would be a declared moratorium per se. The ordinance currently says you apply within a certain window.
Yep.
So Brittany missed that window. And so it's really a question of that, as well as the parallel process that was underway of looking at.
So there isn't a declared moratorium, so our motion isn't out of order going against any moratorium. That's what I wanted to
No, it's just really previous discussion of the council to look at the issue.
Got it.
Joanne?
I wanted to, just before I vote, ask, she had made a public comment. This is Brittany Sparkles that we're discussing, correct? I'm not sure. I can't remember. I just remember your sparkly personality. Can't remember the real last name. But she mentioned her background, and I thought it was important that that will be on the application, and that she is a performer. She's not a vendor. That she will fall as a qualified performer. So,
Yes. Yes. So, Ray, if you could press that button, please. So this is, the motion is made by Ray Murphy and seconded by Rexanne Hossafras to allow Brittany to, Rexanne, yours says vote in progress?
Yeah, it won't let me second.
It won't, yeah.
There, how's that? Oh, that doesn't do anything.
You're
if
now
you-
the seconder.
Yeah, I know. Michelle, if you could please clear that again. I don't know what happened. The motion is to allow Brittany to proceed with her performance for the next 30 days or until the ordinance comes back to us.
Madam Mayor?
Seconded. Yes, sir.
I think right now the issue is that she can't apply for a permit. This would be allow her to apply for, and if she meets all the criteria of a permit,
Of course.
to be issued one.
Of course.
Not that she automatically gets one.
Yes, of course. Still having a problem here with this machine, so the motion is by Ray and seconded by
It
Rexanne.
is. Go ahead, Ray. It came up.
Okay.
Now, if everyone would vote, please, we'll wrap this up. Thank you. Brittany, if you'll file all the proper paperwork, thank you very much, and thanks for being so persistent. Next is the town attorney items. John, do you have anything?
Yes, I do. I'll start with the bad news and then finish with the good news.
Great.
We have received an appeal from the Code Enforcement Special Magistrate's decision ruling against Mr. Prasad in the operation of the parking lot, the commercial parking lot in his property next to the restaurant on the boulevard. The good news is that we have convinced Mr. Prasad and his attorney that it is prudent in the better course of conduct to abate the appeal and for him to just come and apply for the special exception. So he will be doing that in short order, and hopefully we will dispose of the matter through the special exception process.
Excellent. That's very good news. Now,
Nothing further.
Oh, I thought there was bad news in there somewhere. Oh,
No, that-
okay, got it all. All right, any questions for the town attorney? Council members' items and reports. Mr. Murphy, anything?
Not really.
That's all right.
I did go to the Kiwanis Club on Friday and spoke with them at Bonita Bill's. Always a nice group to go and see, and enjoyed that very much, and that's it.
Okay, Bruce?
I've started the process of reviewing that parasail ordinance or whatever it is.
Yes?
And I'm going to continue that, and maybe next meeting have a report on that.
Are you talking about Mr. Rinaldi? Yeah. Okay.
The last meeting, I was asked to go review the ordinance with the town folks and bring it back for some comment.
Okay. So it's not specifically Patrick's request? Because Patrick
Right.
has requested someone asked to bring this back. Okay, it's not that. All right?
Okay, wait.
Go ahead, sorry.
So what's the story with this guy with his roof on his dock? Can we talk about that?
I can't because I don't know about it, but I did give him my card on the way out the door and asked him to call me tomorrow.
Good, okay.
That's it.
I can't believe someone would say, well, no, never mind. Rexanne?
I guess I'd just like to say for the record, Mr. Rinaldi has contacted me and asked me to bring that back, and I don't feel it's appropriate, so I won't be asking that it be placed back on the agenda.
Joanne?
I also will not be asking to bring that back on the agenda. But I also wonder, you've sent me some emails. Have we, or copies, all of us, copies of the email back and forth with the sheriff? Do we have a meeting set up yet? Do we have some response with regard to that?
I'd have a date. I've copied the council on my sort of second request. I did receive an email from the district captain that they're working on it, but I didn't get a specific date back yet.
And we're just looking to speak to the district captain, right? Or
Well,
you're asking for the sheriff too?
protocol-wise, in the email, it said the sheriff or his designee. So I know the sheriff's schedule is probably very demanding.
Sure.
And I wanted to try to communicate that the council would be very happy with a representative of the sheriff's office, whether it's the under sheriff or the district captain or whomever. Didn't have to be the sheriff personally. But we haven't gotten a date back yet.
It would actually be my preference that it's not the sheriff. I'd like our local person. I think we'd accomplish a great deal more. So if you want to make that more specific, that it's,
I'll communicate that today.
I agree.
I agree.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
I'm done, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to see who, if anyone, might be able to attend the county commission meeting on Wednesday relative to the DRGR. I gave you guys an update, meeting with the mayors tomorrow. I'm meeting with Mayor Kevin Ruane from Sanibel. If there's an update, I'll email Roger and he can share it with all of you. I suspect there will be, because at the meeting of the cities, Kevin was designated as someone to speak individually to the commissioners to see whether or not there was any shifting to be done. But so I guess I'll hear the update on that tomorrow and I'll share it with you. But is anybody else able to attend on Wednesday of next week?
I have an Anchorage Advisory Committee meeting. If they don't have a quorum for some reason, I'll get in my car and drive there.
Great.
I'm
You're
out of town.
Yeah, you told me
said
that.
I'm sorry.
And,
Is it this week or next week?
It's day after tomorrow. It's Wednesday. Yeah, it's Wednesday. All of the city of Bonita Springs, all of their council members, all of Bonita Springs council members are in attendance.
Are they attending or speaking?
They're attending and speaking. Now, the Estero council members were not going to speak, just the mayor was, but that may change between now and then.
Are you going to be there?
I'm going to be there and I'm going to speak. Yep. Okay.
I'd probably like to go.
Okay. Well, I'll round you all up later.
Yeah.
All right. I think it would be great if we could go, at least a few of us.
Thank you guys for going. I'm
Yeah,
sorry that I cannot.
absolutely.
I would if I were not out of town.
Sure.
I don't have anything else, but I am going to call for a 10-minute adjournment in hopes that Christy will be able to get the
She's back.
She is back. Christy, if you'll come up, we'll move back to.
While she's walking up, Council Butcher's expectation is correct. That is that boring includes the pipe, right? Is that what the contractor advisor?
Correct.
All items are material and installation.
Good.
Okay, I'll move to authorize the town manager to enter into contract for construction of Phase 3B of the Estero Boulevard Waterline Replacement Project from Lanark Avenue to Albatross Street with Mitchell and Stark. Do I need to read any further?
Your move.
Who seconds that motion?
I'll second.
If everyone could. Bruce, do you have a question?
This is like Family Feud.
Anybody else have any questions? If you would, please place your vote. The motion carries 5-0. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
She can have the motion.
And
I'll take
thank
the
you all
second.
for your enthusiasm. It is 11:43, and this meeting of the Fort Myers Beach Town Council is adjourned.
So what else has a fast buzzer? Adjourn.